All right, everyone, welcome in to episode 146 here of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the only sports podcast talking about both American and Brazilian sports. I'm Nico live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, and joining me from Sao Paulo, Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gus Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing on this Wednesday evening?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I put the Corinthians Stadium on my background to honor Friday's game. But there's a current game right now at the same stadium, Corinthians against Juventude, quarterfinals of the Brazilian Cup. Corinthians just scored, making it 2-1. The first game in Caxias do Sul was 2-1 for Juventude. So currently, game going to penalty shootouts. Uh, but it's funny that there's still some like signs and things that are still on the grass that kind of reminds on the Friday game between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Absolutely. And of course, I would be remiss as an American to not dedicate this episode to the nearly 3,000 innocent lives that were lost 23 years ago on September 11th, 2001, and one of the largest terrorist attacks in modern history. Largest one in modern American history, that's for sure, in New York, Washington, and in Pennsylvania. So, just do a news story on it today. Talked to a former general who actually saw the Pentagon get hit on that day. And even though I can't remember 9/11, I was only 3 years old when that occurred. But still, obviously, it's significantly affected American life since then. So, um, just know, just wanted to, as an American, that's just something I've been thinking about today.
Oh yeah, that's definitely important to remember. September 11, 2001, a day that changed the 21st century, definitely changed the landscape of American and international politics and policies, and definitely the lives of 2,950 people that were affected by in the World Trade Center, in the planes that crashed in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. Definitely important to remember those lives as well because they went to live their lives on that day and never return home.
Exactly. And everyone that since then has been forgotten. But thankfully, on this September 11th, things are much calmer. Well, I don't say much calmer, but at least, we didn't have that happen today. But thankfully, you know, showing, I guess, the international cooperation that can come when countries do kind of work together. Of course, for this show, America, Brazil, anytime that we see our countries overlap, it's a pretty big deal. And we came on Friday to preview one of those big deals, and that would be the Eagles versus the Packers in Sao Paulo. Of course, it was held on Friday night. It was aired here on Peacock in the States, and turned out to be, I thought, an excellent game, excellent back and forth game between Philadelphia and Green Bay. And however, the storyline coming out of it, not as positive. Jordan Love, the starting quarterback for Green Bay, the effective franchise quarterback for them, got hurt at the end of the game. Injured his MCL. He's going to be out for at least the next 4 weeks. And this is leaving some folks mad about the game being in Brazil. They're blaming the field, saying that it was too slippery, that a soccer field shouldn't be the same for a football stadium. And Gus, obviously you are incredibly familiar with the stadium. You go to the stadium all the time. Kind of just shed some light on how do you feel like they were able to transition this field from a soccer field to a football field? Do you feel like they did it well?
I mean, for what I can see right now, I'm watching the game right now on the same stadium, and for me, the grass looks fine. I guess I'm used to really poor grass in the kind of soccer that I watch. The lower division, especially working as a PR for Rio Branco. But I saw a point. I don't remember who made this point, and it's kind of valid. Is that this grass is made for soccer, which is not heavy equipment as the NFL, and also the kind of soccer is more light in terms of the grass. Of course, the grass every grass get damaged when you play it. It's soccer, football, you name it. When you're practicing a sport on grass, you affect the quality of it. But definitely, football can affect it more heavily than soccer. Of course, I feel like it's a little bit over proportion. So if you want to blame Corinthians Stadium and maybe look the other way, then you should ban FedEx Field because how many there are at least two quarterbacks where their careers were ruined because of the grass at FedEx Field. So, and that was a football stadium, not a soccer stadium. Am I wrong?
You are absolutely correct. I mean, I'd rather play on my home games at Corinthians than in FedEx Field. I'd rather play on my home games at the Hickson High School's field, which has a lot of problems, than FedEx Field. I mean, that
Yeah.
field is so
So,
bad.
so that's what I'm saying. This argument, oh, because the soccer stadium is not prepared for a football game, is just a little bit over proportion. Because as I just point out, a football specific field ruined the careers of not one but two quarterbacks from the team that they were playing for, RG3 and Alex Smith. So, of course, I feel for Jordan Love, because after a tremendous 2023-2024 season, ending on a high note, everybody had a lot of expectations for him coming up this season. He has this terrible injury. I feel for him, but I don't think you should this definitely don't is not going to affect the relationship between the National Football League and Brazil. I think Roger Goodell was very happy about how the stadium was full, how the Brazilian crowd embraced it. From what I can tell from the coverage, the fans were ecstatic, were peaceful. I feel like the kind of reaction to it, I definitely can see Brazil hosting other football games. I feel from what I can, felt and saw from coverage and everything, definitely Brazil is getting another NFL game.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the criticism stems from people who are just mad they didn't get to watch this game in America, um, and don't understand or recognize why the NFL wanted to have this game in Brazil is to introduce the game to more and more folks. When you talked about it last week, there's going to be a lot of people last week who watched their very first American football game on Friday. That have you had a chance to talk to some of those people
Yeah,
about what they thought of this game?
I mean, if the I'm not I if I couldn't watch this game, I'm mad. Should be reason to bash it. Then I should be here angry about it because I wasn't able to go. As we talked about on Friday, there were circumstances that unfortunately I wasn't able to go. But that's not the case to badmouth. That was still a historic event. The as you point out, I think on our WhatsApp chat, people were uh, uh, impressed about the Brazilian national anthem.
I say, who was that lady? Because she belted
Oh,
it. It was
oh my! I believe that's Luisa Sonza. I think.
like she was. I don't know what she was saying, but it was gorgeous. Or she was saying.
I think. Yeah, that's her, Luisa Sonza. She is this upper comer Brazilian singer who is known for her relationships because she was married to this influencer who was this big influencer who they seemed the perfect couple, and then they got divorced because she allegedly cheated on him and she didn't want to be married to him anymore, and then she got in another relationship with this guy and made a music for him, and then he cheated on her. So she's known for her affairs than for her music. But I mean, I have to say she's a good singer. She did a fantastic job, but that's some background about her love life.
Interesting. But clearly for an American audience who had no idea about her, I mean,
Corinthians has
they
scored.
certainly were very interesting.
Incredible. Corinthians just scored on the last minute of the game, scoring a goal that could possibly qualify them for the Brazilian Cup semifinal. On a corner kick from the right hand side. I don't know if I think it was Andre Ramalho who scored it. I couldn't see clearly, but Corinthians 3-1, a 4-3 on the aggregate, uh, possibly scoring the goal. They're gonna take them to the Brazilian Cup semifinals. And what a match! What a match! I have to say, kind of like the NFL on Friday, the emotions until the last play of the game.
Yeah, as I said, and also too, I'm glad Joe got a great game too, because that was probably the best game of week. Well, one of the best games of week one. And we'll go for the rest of week one. But that's probably one of the top three or four easily. And Packers Eagles, they both look like contending teams. Now we're gonna have to wait and see how long Jordan Love is injured. I think he'll be back hopefully by mid-season, which really could put a dent, I think, in their championship hopes. Because remember, I picked that team to go to the Super Bowl. If they drop a couple more games early than I was anticipating, that could change that. That could definitely change things. But
And
overall, I think it was high.
and
Go ahead.
interesting is who's going to replace him is a guy that you're kind of familiar with, especially for the team that he used to play.
Well, it's not just one guy potentially. We're talking about potentially two guys because obviously Malik Willis right now is the backup quarterback. I'm just going to go out here and say it. There's no way that Malik Willis can be the answer for a couple of weeks if Jordan Love is out for several weeks, like I think he's going to be. Malik Willis is horrible. He is the worst quarterback I've ever seen for the Tennessee Titans. Okay, well, I'll get more into that in a little bit. But he up until now, in a vacuum, he's the worst quarterback I've ever seen for the Tennessee Titans. Um, However, there is a certain someone who's currently a free agent out in the market, not signed, a certain Ryan Tannehill, who, if you were really in a pinch and needed a couple of weeks, you could do much worse. And I think Ryan Tannehill, frankly, would do an okay job until Jordan Love came back.
And it will kind of will be the same story where Ryan Tannehill came to to Nashville. I think as I remember, Marcus Mariota got injured, and then he stepped in, and then he kind of blossomed, and then kind of took over as a starting quarterback. Am I wrong? I think that was kind of it.
Right. Although there's some reports today saying that Love actually might be ready this week, which I think would be foolish. If I'm Green Bay, I don't rush him back. Sit him the time that you need because it's a 17 game season. Like there's no reason to rush him back. He's a franchise quarterback. You don't want to ruin him, down the road, right? Like you want to make sure he's fully healthy before you put him back on the field. That would be a stupid thing to do if you're Green Bay.
I
Um,
mean, it's because I get their point because their next opponent is kind of tough. Playing the Colts even though it's a Lambeau Field, it's a tough matchup.
right. And without Jordan Love, spoiler, I'm picking the Colts to win that game because I know they lost Sunday, but the Colts look like a pretty good team to me. So, um, yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation. Yeah, but if you're in okay, if it's just this week, fine. You just suck it up and play Malik Willis, and you hope for the best. I don't think it's going to work out well for them. I'm just telling you from firsthand experience. But hey, maybe Matt LaFleur can work some on Malik Willis. I don't know because he never showed me anything in Tennessee that showed me he could play for anyone in the NFL.
Yeah, he'll be kind of like a game manager, probably relying a lot on the running game, but I think the Green Bay season definitely depends on how sooner Jordan Love can come back. But going back to Friday's game, definitely was a back and forth game. Green Bay probably could have had a better lead in the first half. I think Green Bay played better football, had way more opportunities, but just couldn't, capitalize it. Especially, converting two drives that were like really on, the red zone, and they just have to settle for a field goal.
Yep. We talked about it in the WhatsApp chat. Like as soon as that happened, they're going to come back and win the game. Our Eagles will come back because Jalen Hurts was going to figure out. And how about Saquon Barkley? 3 touchdowns in his Eagles debut. It's amazing what happens when you actually put a real offensive line in front of Saquon Barkley. It turns out he is one of the best running backs in the league. He just needed to be on a functional offense. which, as we saw in the Meadowlands, the Giants are not a functional offense
Do
whatsoever.
you know do you know who really had a bad weekend? Joe Shoden, definitely.
Mm. Yeah, well, I don't think Joe Schroeder had much of a choice. He's been put in a bad spot because of the Daniel Jones contract that was signed before he got there. The line is in a horrific state, so like it made no sense to really keep Saquon. I don't blame him for letting him go because you're just wasting him. You're not going to win anything with him right now. Let him go because you're in tank mode if you're New York. Because Daniel Jones, oh my gosh, throwing a pick six on a screen pass, losing by 22 to Sam Darnold. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just awful, awful. He was not the only quarterback that was awful though. But uh, I'll say this: so the Eagles, though, they look like they have a pulse again, and we'll see if they can keep this going and maybe reverse back uh, on what we saw at the end of last year. If they do, Nick Sirianni's job should be fine in Philly because that looked like a much more competitive team. And that defense played very well, I thought, throughout the day. Although they did get kind of cooked by Jaden Reed, who Jay, I think he's going to be the wide receiver one in Green Bay, and he just looked awesome. He looked like a Debo Samuel type to me throughout the game on Friday, number 11 for Green Bay. And plus, and I'll say this too. Josh Jacobs didn't really impress me as the Green Bay running back. He only had one or two good runs throughout the game. Really got stifled the rest of the time. So, especially if they have to go without Jordan Love for some period of time, that's going to be a really difficult situation for the Green Bay offense. But overall, great game. I'm glad that everything went smoothly and well, and hopefully Sao Paulo gets another shot to host an NFL game in the future.
Yeah, and maybe this time Gustavo Tomazeli will be there witnessing, but still, congratulations to all the people who put up who you know worked to make this possible. And again, historical night for Brazil, being the first South American country to host a National Football League game. May hopefully it's not the last. I just hope there's the first of many to come, and and possibly, I wonder if they're gonna go to other cities or even stadiums in São Paulo. But definitely, you know, it was a historical night for
I bet next
Brazil.
time they try to go to Maracana in Rio.
Yeah, yeah, I would think so. I would say that's probably a really likely destination. That's a really likely destination.
Yeah. All right. Well, and thankfully too, the good thing about Sao Paulo is their police did not make the news, like certain cities in America this week. So
Oh,
transitioning into
I'm just saying that for all the American sports influencers and all the people who are like commenting on São Paulo's secure and safety, the police who made the headlines with the NFL wasn't São Paulo police.
it was Miami. And let's be first frank. This is the first time Miami's had problems this year. Remember the Argentina Uruguay final and the problems we saw there? Like, what's going
Yeah,
on in Miami? Like, why is Miami unable to host major sporting events
yeah.
without incident?
Yeah, a lot of people questioning, the security or even the future of São Paulo. Miami should be more in question to host, sporting events coming forward, like the 2026 World Cup or even like the next year's FIFA Club World Cup. Because they seem they cannot get their s together.
Nope, nope. Because obviously, if you didn't see, Tyreek Hill was on his way to the game, and he was pulled over. And apparently, he was pulled over because his window tints were too dark. Which it's a stupid law, but whatever. He gets pulled over, and basically, we saw the body cam footage, and it's like a 40-minute body cam footage. The cop, he asked him to bring the window down, and he wants to see his registration and stuff. And Tyreek Hill's like, "Why are you pulling me over for?" And gets kind of combative with the police. They go back and forth. He pulls his window back up, and that's when basically the cops open up the door, drag out Tyreek Hill, throw him onto the ground, and arrest him. And then some of his teammates, including Calais Campbell, Campbell rather, that came by, stopped, and we're like, "What are you doing?" Started filming, and then he got put in handcuffs. It was just a whole mess, and now it's just been a whole controversy because it's a cop, arresting an African American male, and of course, we all know if you go back 4 years to 2020, and even further beyond then, the connotations socially around incidents such as these. Although, if you listen to the clip, it sounds like the guy was Cuban. But anyway, I mean, it is Miami after all. Um, and of course, he's come out, Tyreek Hill, his agent, the Miami Dolphins have come out and have demanded this cop be fired. The police union said the cop did nothing wrong. Tyreek Hill even admitted today that, maybe I was a little bit too combative in this situation. Um, this whole thing is definitely a mess. And it seems like, on one hand, the window 10 thing is stupid. He shouldn't get pulled over for that. But, if he had just, handed the registration and stuff, and, because most people have been pulled over. I know I have, you know, cooperate, you're not going to get pulled out of the car in 99% of cases. Hold on, we can't hear you guys.
Definitely, it's not a good situation for the Miami community, uh, between a star African American athlete and a police department. So definitely, is how much of a distraction this could be. That's the question.
Right, right. And it's funny because he still went on to play that day and scored a touchdown for sure. And I'll be curious to see how this situation gets resolved because, I mean, really and truly, this is going to be probably litigated in a lawsuit or something. Because certainly the cop did seem like he was on a bit of a power trip, and then arresting Calais Campbell for no reason. That was the part I'm just like, okay, come on, man, what are you doing? He has a constitutional right to film your actions. You're a government actor. Like, he wasn't disrupting the scene. He wasn't being obstructionist, or at least in my opinion, he wasn't. But in any case, that's enough. Before I get myself into any trouble on this topic, that's enough on police actions. But Tyreek went on to play. He scored an 80-yard touchdown, and the Dolphins had to rally to beat the Jaguars in the Battle of Florida, even though the game kind of became secondary to the events leading into it. And you have to commend Miami because, like, you could have easily let that whole situation distract you, make the whole team kind of out of balance. And it really looked like that might have been the case in the first half, and they kind of pulled it together, came back and got a big win to start off the year. So kudos to Mike McDaniel and the rest of the team for being able to pull that off.
Yeah, definitely a very big win, especially the way they didn't play well in the first half, with a 10-point deficit, and they came back and won. So, especially on a last play field goal. So, definitely, in terms of morale, it's a really big win for the Dolphins, and how much this is going to, affect the Jaguars that were already kind of, came with some chip on their shoulder, but was a very thrilling game.
Yeah, and on the side of the Jaguars, it's time to have a dialogue about Trevor Lawrence. This guy, he was supposed to be the savior of Jacksonville. Let me read you his stats, guys. 12 of 21, 162 yards, one touchdown. No points in the second half. How do we defend this? How can you defend this? I mean, this is supposed to be a guy supposed to be transformative for the Jacksonville franchise, and he's putting up pedestrian stat lines. I mean, how he's not. I mean, this is Blake Bortles numbers. I mean, also, I think another stat of concern to me: Christian Kirk, the guy you're paying $72 million over a 4-year period, only had one catch all day. They're not getting the ball to their guys.
Yeah. So is that really Trevor Lawrence, or Jacksonville still has a below average roster? How much can we
I,
put on Trevor Lawrence's shoulder? This
well, a great quarterback
underperformance.
elevates. Look what Patrick Mahomes did last year with a subpar supporting cast outside of Travis Kelce. he still won the Super Bowl. He's won the Super Bowl 2 times in a row without Tyreek Hill, without having an elite receiver. Elite quarterbacks are able to elevate their roster. Trevor Lawrence is not that. It's, I mean, it's unfortunate because it looked like he, for a sure thing, was going to be elite, and it just hasn't panned out like that at all. Um, you just have to wonder maybe if the year one with Urban Meyer stunted his development a little bit, and he just never truly recovered. Because it just really seems like that we should be seeing more from him than we are.
Yeah, I think we are waiting for Trevor Lawrence to be that highly productive and explosive quarterback he was at Clemson, but we saw glimpses of it, but not consistency.
Absolutely. Well, at least he's not having the worst weekend for a former Clemson quarterback because, man, the other Clemson superstar quarterback, he might be the most down bad quarterback in the entire league right now, outside of maybe Daniel Jones. Deshaun Watson. Mike. I mean, part of this is what we saw on the field. Part of this is what's has reared its ugly head once again off the field. Deshaun Watson, 24 45, 169, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. At halftime in this game, he had 36 yards passing. 36. They're paying him $230 million, and he had 36 yards passing against the Dallas Cowboys.
I think it was the more signs of how delusional the Browns were to sign that contract. And remember, it's 100% guaranteed. 100% guaranteed.
I mean, is there not? I wonder. There has to be a clause in there for actions, though. Because okay, so the other part of this story is there's more lawsuits coming out against Deshaun Watson for allegedly potentially more sexual assaults that he did off the field. I'm not here to tell you whether or not that's true or not true, but that more litigation's coming at Deshaun Watson. Even though it seemed like the Browns, I'm assuming when they signed him, thought all of that was done. Uh, so if there's more that has been hidden from the public, but now it comes to light, um, I just have to wonder if there's a chance the Browns might try to look for a way to nullify this contract because that would be the best case scenario for them. Is if they could say, "Look, you've breached your contract because you still are doing all these things off the field," and if they could do that, that would be a huge boon to Cleveland. They can just wipe their hands clean and move on.
Yeah, I feel like probably Cleveland fans are they're because for I feel like for this and since the contract was signed, Cleveland fans were hopeful and patient with him. Even last year, when he started some games, there were no pressure. But I think if by week 8 he can't produce, and Cleveland's like 2-6, 3-5, then the fans' patience are probably done.
Yeah, and what's crazy is they play at Jacksonville this week. It's Deshaun Watson versus Trevor Lawrence. I mean, which Clemson quarterback in this matchup has more pressure?
I think Deshaun, because of the this really kind of aggressive contract that has to work. So even though Trevor Lawrence got a new contract, which was also big numbers, Deshaun's contract is more predatory, you can say, in terms of you know salary cap and the guaranteed percentage.
Right. That's gonna be a fascinating matchup. Watching those two go at it, Dabo Sweeney just has to be so proud. He has to be so proud.
Is he, or maybe he was, because if you think about it, didn't we kind of had the same speech of both. They came to the league with a lot of expectations. You know, they had at least one good season. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I believe, had a good 2022 season, and Deshaun Watson, the 2019 season, they were decent. They went to the playoffs, but overall, I don't think both of them reached the level that we all expected.
That's definitely true. But Watson early on looked elite, so it's just crazy how bad he looks now in comparison. But shout out to the Cowboys, though. I guess we'll talk for the next 4 months about them being Super Bowl contenders until what will inevitably happen in January.
I won't fall. I encourage Cowboys fans, don't fall for it anymore. That's the same story we see over and over and over and over again and again. Like uh like last year, uh they uh they started the season with a really big win over the New York Giants, 40 to nothing. And people were hyping up. So, you know, Cowboys are really good on week 1 and week uh 9, 10, 11, 12. The big question is, can they play this well when it matters? I mean, Cowboy fans know their team can play in September, October, November, but they are not sure if this team can play this well in January.
Exactly. So we'll see how all the Cowboys can do right now is win in September. So at least they're off to that start. All right, Gus, let's go into it. It's time uh, to rip the
It's time.
Titans a new one here.
It's time for the. Let's see if it's gonna be a weekly segment of Nick Hill venting about the Titans.
Yeah, it'll probably be a weekly segment um,
Yeah,
because it
I,
just
I
seems like that.
I hope not, but that may happen.
Yeah, well, okay, let's go back in time to 2023. I don't know what day it was, but it was a night in the spring of 2023 when the Tennessee Titans had a pretty interesting decision, right? First and foremost, round one, they picked Peter Skonkowski to the offensive line. Decent pick. Um, of course, Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky, had been invited to the draft because everyone assumed he was going to be a first round draft pick. No one wanted him. He fell all the way down the board like this, just fell and fell until he fell out of the first round, which didn't surprise me, didn't surprise a lot of people because, I had seen him play once upon a time on Halloween weekend 2022. Saw him come to Knoxville to play the Tennessee Volunteers, and he stunk up the joint. They even passed for 100 yards in that game. Meanwhile, Hendon Hooker threw for, I believe, 3 touchdowns in that game. Looked spectacular. Um, and the Titans, when they came back the next night on that Friday night, had two choices. They could either take Hendon Hooker, the guy who had helped revitalize the Tennessee Volunteers, who we're going to talk much, much more about, and I'll be much happier in that segment. But he had helped revitalize the Tennessee Volunteers into a juggernaut, especially offensively. Or they could go with the guy in Will Levis, who couldn't even pass for 100 yards from the subpar Tennessee secondary, lost to Vanderbilt that year. Um, and just overall, it wowed you with the arm talent, but I don't know, never really wowed me on the field. Um, we all know what the Titans decided to do that night. They decided to go with the guy from Kentucky. I didn't like it then. I came on here. I don't know what episode that would be. I would need to go back and pull it up because we were doing this show by then. I'm sure I came on the next night and just reamed it. I think Jason was on the show too and we were just ripping this pick of Will Levis over Hendon Hooker. And at a certain point, after the initial anger wore off from this pick, I'm like, okay, he's gonna be a Titan. I've grown to love Derrick Henry. He went to Alabama. I'm gonna give Will Levis a shot because I really don't have a choice at this point. So we go through last year. They struggled for the first part of the year. Um, and they give Levis a shot, and he actually looked really good. He came out through 4 touchdowns against Atlanta, won a big game on the road at Miami. and really showed some flashes. Now, he made mistakes, but he's a rookie. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Of course, we fired Vrabel like we should have because the offense was stale, boring, uninspiring, and led to the downfall because we couldn't draft offensive linemen, wasted time with Malik Willis, and overall had perhaps the worst product in the NFL outside of the Carolina Panthers. So now we've come in with Brian Callahan, promises of a revamped offense, um, and a more exciting team. I was under the impression, while not necessarily, I was thinking going into the season, the Titans would be a Super Bowl contender by any stretch of the imagination. That at least will be more fun to watch. So that brings us to this past Sunday in Chicago against the Bears, rookie quarterback. Lots of excitement there. Two teams hoping for more. And the first half was actually pretty fun. The defense and throughout this entire game, and before I go into the struggles of the offense, the defense was spectacular in this game. They didn't let Caleb Williams or this offense do anything. They didn't score a single touchdown on offense in this game. But let's remind the folks at home that happened. They did not score a single touchdown on offense. Caleb Williams free for 93 yards in this game. They did nothing on offense. Caleb Williams looks very shaky, at least in his first start. And I don't know if this means the Bears' offense is bad or the Titans' defense is just that good. If the Titans' defense is just that good, then this makes this next part really even more maddening. Because as great as the defense played for the Tennessee Titans, Will Levis and the Titans offense played one of the worst halves of football that I have ever seen. Completely anemic, no imagination. It looked like I was watching a Vrabel rerun from last year. It was just like run, failed pass, punt the entire time. And then, in the fourth quarter, or late in the middle of the third quarter, we get a punt block. This is the NFL. How do you get a punt blocked? I could, excuse it in college because these are college players, but these are supposed to be professional football players. How do you get a punt blocked? There's no excuse. No excuse. Fire the special teams coordinator for that alone. Because this is the NFL. I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to simple stuff like that. All right. Competent NFL teams don't get their punts blocked. And then midway through the fourth quarter, as Will Levis is getting pressured, he throws perhaps the stupidest football I have ever seen, falling down. I don't know what this guy's thinking. Sometimes you just have to eat the sack. But no, he's like, I'm Will Levis. I've got a big arm. I eat mayonnaise for breakfast. I make sex tapes with my girlfriend, and I'm going to throw this freaking football. And he threw the football to the defense. They ran it back for a pick six and lost the game for the Tennessee Titans. And his attempts to come back the other way failed. And of course, he threw another interception because he's Will Levis and he sucks. So, as you can tell, Gus, I am off the Will Levis train again.
And I was even mocking you because you were praising him in the first half, and I was like, man, kind of reminding you that it was like, weren't you too harsh on him? But I guess you weren't.
See, this because I just knew, and I should have listened to all the other folks who were like, "Look, Will Levis, sure, he can wow you sometimes, but the more and more tape they get on him, he's probably going to fall apart." And Jason told me this, and I'm like, want to believe, he has a shot. I like what I've seen so far. Maybe he can get better. Maybe he has it up here. He doesn't have it up here. And what really sucks about this situation is Hendon Hooker would be much better. I'm sorry. I'm not saying Hendon Hooker would be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I just know Hendon Hooker would have won that football game on Sunday. I am full confident that Hendon Hooker would have won that game. It would be 1-0. And I would have a lot more hope with Hendon Hooker. I don't have a lot of hope with Will Levis.
But if I am Hendon Hooker, do I really want to swap spots? He's a backup in Detroit. He's comfortable. He's has a really good mentor, Jared Goff, which I don't think he has ego. I think he's a good teammate. So he's a way better spot. So for himself, for Henry Hooker himself, I think he's in a way better spot than Will Levis.
Absolutely. I mean, you're not wrong, and I hope he stays in that comfortable position, and I hope that he continues to grow, and we get to take over a really good football team at some point, because he certainly wouldn't be able to get that taken here. Now, the frustrating thing too that I saw in this game is the Titans ran the ball pretty well. When you look at Tony Pollard actually ran for 5.1 yards per carry, 16 carries for 82 yards. Decent first start as an RB1. Tajay Spears only had 4 carries in this game for 21 yards, 5 yards a carry. Why did he only get 4 touches? Seriously. Like, Tajay Spears has a lot of talent. He needs more than 4 carries, especially when you look at the fact that Levis threw the ball 32 times. Um, like, if the running game is working, please use the running game. Okay, like, it just makes no sense when you look at the play calling. You're relying on a guy who averaged 4 yards a pass and Will Levis, and plus when he had guys deep, he had Calvin Ridley deep twice in this game, wide open, overthrew them both times. Reminiscent of Joe Milton in Knoxville to an extent. But even then, Joe Milton probably would have hit those. Because honestly, I'd rather even have Joe Milton than Will Levis in Nashville. Actually, I don't know.
I,
That probably
I,
wouldn't work too well either. But
I guess at this point you would even take. I guess at this point, would you take Jared Garantano
uh,
instead of Will
no,
Levis?
okay. Don't get too crazy, guys. I look. If
I'm
I'm
not,
going to be
I was
forced,
just mocking you because you point two
yeah.
former Tennessee quarterbacks. So not
Well,
this one.
and let's be real. Joe Milton is a lot better than Jared. I was critical of Joe Milton, but he's way better than Jared Garantano. But in any case, yeah, it's disappointing to say the least. Because this defense looks really good. I don't know if they really truly are that good, but if they're as good as they look, then the Titans should have chances to win plenty of ball games. And man, it's just going to come down to Will Levis, and he better develop. Because I'm pretty much out on him now. If he comes back and let's say we win this week, win next week, whatever, and starts playing well, he has a chance to maybe win me back. But right now, I am off the Will Levis train, and he better turn around quick, or else I'm going to be openly calling for his benching. So I'm almost at the point to call for his benching right now. But do I really want to watch Mason Rudolph? Not really. So um, I can't hear you right now.
You know what's funny about next week Titans game?
It's against
It's
the Jets.
Aaron Rodgers Jets, and I'm impressed. The tickets are only $37. I mean, uh, to what? I mean, I wish that kind of a matchup when I was in Tennessee because I'm a Jets fan. Watch Aaron Rodgers, the Jets in Nashville for $40. Yeah, but so things don't
Yeah,
get
and they
easier
got,
for.
and that's like a third of the price of what's going to cost to get into Neyland Stadium Saturday night against Kent State. So you know, goes to show you right now, people in Tennessee aren't very interested in the Titans. It feels like. Yeah, I feel like I don't even see that much Titans gear out. It's all ball stuff right now,
Uh,
and for good reason. Uh, we'll get to them in just a minute. Um, Real quick, finishing off some NFL here. Carolina Panthers. Oh my God, they lost 47-10 to the New Orleans Saints. They might go 0-17. They look horrible. I was shocked how bad they looked.
yeah, I feel bad for Bryce Young, really bad. He's definitely another Alabama quarterback who probably did not land in a stable organization or that has any offense. I did not expect that kind of a blowout. Of course, great matchup for my friend Derek Carr. I'm really happy for him. He's my favorite quarterback in the NFL because he was the only quarterback in the NFL that I had the chance to meet in person. He was very nice to me. We took a picture together. So I will you will never hear me talking bad about Derek Carr. Never. For a guy who was as
Absolutely.
nice to me as he was when he was playing for back then the Oakland Raiders against the Tennessee Titans, and I'll never forget when I was going from the field to the elevator at Nissan Stadium, and I was passing through the visitor locker room, and I saw somebody dropping headphones, and I picked it up, and when I saw that was him, I didn't know how what to say or what to react. I wanted to interview him, but I knew I didn't want to cause trouble, or so I took a risk. I know it's not the ideal situation, especially when you're covering game or you have a media pass. But I was like, I'm not gonna let this opportunity go to waste. So he was very kind to me, took a picture with me. We had a good conversation. So I'm happy he's bouncing back. Had a really good game. You know, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. So I'm really happy for him.
Absolutely, and they'll have much tougher competition this week going to Dallas. Some other quick reaction thoughts I just have: the Falcons are pathetic.
Yeah,
Even
I want
still,
to talk about that game because that was the game that I stopped and watched this weekend. Oh my God, the O line Falcons. I know we talked on our WhatsApp chat that the Steelers defense are good, okay, but good God, Kirk Cousins was really unprotected. I mean, of course, uh, he didn't play as well as people expected. But come on, he did not had any protection, any protection. He
mm,
was sacked like what? I feel like I lost track of how many times he was sacked. He was like probably sacked at least 4 to 6 times. Let me get. So he was sacked 2 for 18. It should have been higher. If I don't know, maybe I don't. I'm not reading the stats correctly, but
I know,
he was.
no, no, you're reading it correctly. Now you probably feel like the that caused a lot of hurries, and I was telling you this in the chat. In my view, I think T.J. Watt might be the best player in the league.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm not saying that the you should not praise the Steelers defense or even T.J. Watt. They did a fantastic job. I mean, Justin Fields did not throw for a single touchdown, and the Steelers scored 18 points on the road, beating the Falcons by 8. How the hell did this happen? Because
So,
we
and
have a
also too, and you also watch more of this game. Do you think the Steelers should roll with Justin Fields, or do you think they should give Russell Wilson a shot at QB?
I mean, I- if if Justin Fields can show consistency, not screwing up, of course, he had moments of inconsistency. If I'm not, if I, he almost had a fumble, I think at some point, but I'm not seeing a big reason right now to take him off the team right now. But I don't think the Steelers are going to be a quarterback rely team. I think as we normally see from Mike Tomlin's teams is heavy defense, getting yards, and right now the most important player on the Steelers offense is Chris Boswell. He is the you know he is the player who cannot get injured. Chris Boswell is more important right now to the Pittsburgh Steelers than Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Like it's crazy to think about, but right now he is the guy who can score in points that are gonna decide the fate for the Steelers.
Oh, absolutely. And um, yeah, the Falcons, man, they got to figure out some offense. As you said, figure out some protection because if you're going to win a division, you're going to have to do better than that. One team that impressed me despite a loss was the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, they were leading Buffalo most of the day. It took some heroics from Josh Allen to win it, but Kyler Murray looks like Kyler Murray again for the first time in like 3 years. I mean, he looks like the Kyler Murray I remember. And if Kyler Murray can play like that, Cardinals could be sneaky good this year.
Probably fighting for a last spot of the wild card. I don't see them winning the division because of how good San Francisco and the Rams are. And so I think that, so from what we saw from the 49ers, Seahawks, Rams, and Cardinals, probably the NFC West is the lowest division in the NFL.
Yeah, the NFC West is going to be a tough, tough division. As you mentioned, the Rams, man, that Rams Lions game was probably the game of the week. I mean, that was a dogfight down to the end. Detroit getting a huge win in overtime. That atmosphere was unreal. And Detroit, I think, proved to me that they're not a 1 year fluke. That they're a team that's here to stay and to compete. But the Rams showed too that that's a team that can face a whole lot of adversity, and they're going to be winning a lot of football games too. Despite losing Puka Nakua for at least 4 weeks, that's a tough loss. But Sean McVay is a really good coach. He'll find his way to scheme around
But
that, I think.
but we have to address the elephant in the room about the Lions. You know, Tyron Arnold. You know, he seemed like a great guy, really, good player. But good God, he gave a lot of, you know, kind of, he had a lot of silly penalties that gave the Rams important offensive momentum, especially in the first half.
Yeah, rookie, in the same environment. Uh, as I said, extremely talented. He has just got to settle down. And I thought overall, outside of the penalties, he played pretty well. Um, he
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's fair. He's a rookie. He's going to learn it. I'm just saying that's something Dan Campbell looked at film and they gonna have an important conversation about, you know, how pass interference right now is something that refs are really gonna go more offensive favor.
and you got to remember too, he's coming from a Nick Saban defense, which is really physical. So he's got to adjust that play styling a little bit in the NFL. But I think he's going to be adjusting it for the good. And I think too, also another thing here, Jared Goff. I feel like Goff was kind of middling in this game to an extent. They relied a lot on the running game to win this, and I still have questions whether or not Jared Goff can truly win a Super Bowl because I'm
But he
not
has,
convinced he's the guy.
but isn't fitting that the quarterback who has a lot to prove is in a franchise who has a lot to prove as well? Because take golf out of the context. How can we see the Lions going to the Super Bowl and winning it? Because it's a very low self-esteem franchise.
Right.
Uh,
They're
that
kind of
has
and they're kind of training themselves, right? And I kind of get into like the Vols. I'm going to get into a little bit, like kind of how to train themselves to be a contender. You have to make yourselves believe that yes, we're supposed to be here. You're supposed to be in the
yeah,
championship conversation. The Lions this year are trying to prove that yes, we belong.
of
And Sunday
course,
night they proved they belonged.
they had a really good playoff run, had a huge win over the Rams. Of course, it was impressive, and they fell short to a really good San Francisco 49ers team. But, you know, I think this season is like, can they really be a consistent competitive team, or last season was a fluke?
True. And I think we're going to see a lot more about the Rams Lions. You just mentioned the 49ers, and they didn't get to play with Christian McCaffrey last night, but they didn't miss, or 2 nights ago, excuse me, but they didn't miss a beat. I mean, Jordan Mason stepped right in, and that offense kept on humming to a 32-19 win. And, at least Aaron Rodgers made it through the full game this time. So better for the Jets in that respect, but they still kind of struggled in this one.
Yeah, they had a kind of good first quarter that gave fans hope, but by the middle of the third quarter, the game was done. Even Tyrod Taylor came in, threw for a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers had a touchdown and interception, so he had an average game. Even his QBR was 51, so he had a very average game. But How again? How can San Francisco be that good but not quarterback dependent? Because Brock Purdy, when he scored 32 points and Brock Purdy did not throw for a single touchdown, it shows that your offense is very multi optional.
And it just goes to show that um, Kyle Shanahan can win with basically any quarterback, which makes even the Trey Lance situation even more perplexing. Why he couldn't make Trey Lance work in that offense, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword because he still hasn't won a Super Bowl, and can Brock Purdy be that guy to bring him over the hump? I mean, it was extremely close last year, but did score a touchdown over time. Patrick Mahomes did, and that's what the Niners. It's not obviously one goal for them is to repeat as the NFC champions, but they're chasing Kansas City. What can you do throughout this year that will get you over the hump against Kansas City? Um, if you're San Francisco, because you've lost to them 2 times in the last 5 years in the Super Bowl. That's your nemesis. That's what you got. It's like Georgia a couple years ago with Alabama. Georgia had to get over them. For San Francisco, you got to get over KC, to say the least. And really, the other game that we hadn't
Well,
touched on that. Oh, go ahead.
no, and I kind of want to compare this San Francisco 49ers run to what they endure back in the 80s and 90s because I believe back then they kind of went back and forth with the Cowboys. So, now they have to, go back and forth with Kansas City. Of course, right now, Kansas City owns San Francisco, but can they reverse that?
Yeah, it's Brock Purdy, Joe Montana. It's Christian McCaffrey, Jerry Rice. I mean, can they be those type of players? And so far, they haven't been able to overcome that, as you said. But if they're going to win one, they're gonna have to do it and do it for the next year or two to take advantage of the window.
Yeah,
Speaking of,
because
go ahead.
no, I'll say that's really important to take advantage of this window because you don't know how when it's gonna close.
Exactly.
Because,
Speaking of
for
window,
example, no, I want to give an example. So, 92 and 93, the Cowboys beat San Francisco in the NFC Championship. Then in 94, finally San Francisco beat them. So that's the proof. Like that the Cowboys own San Francisco, but then they kind of reverse it. That's what they hope this season.
exactly. Exactly. Things go back. I think about Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan lost all those years to them, and they finally got over the hump, and they were able to win a national title because of it. Uh, Speaking of windows, is the Cincinnati Bengals window closed? They looked horrifically bad to the New England Patriots, who I was thinking was going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They still probably will be, but man, that offense looked absolutely pitiful in the opening game.
So now the question is, was 2021 season a fluke? Uh, is the Bengals one season wonder?
Well, I mean, 2022 they made it to the AFC title game again. So like they were really good for like 2 years, but it feels like the shine of that era has kind of gone off. Like you have to wonder, has Joe Burrow suffered one too many injuries? Has the team chemistry kind of fallen apart in Cincinnati? Because Jamar Chase had some back and forth words early last year with Joe Burrow, if you remember, about the direction of the offense. It kind of feels like Cincinnati, just in terms of from a mental standpoint, hasn't recovered from that. And losing games like this is not acceptable. I mean, if you're going to try to beat the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC North, they missed a golden opportunity to get a game up on them. Because remember, Baltimore lost to the Chiefs. So just a really brutal loss for Cincy.
Oh yeah, definitely a brutal loss. Especially that they were playing at home and against the Patriots, which everybody's speaking to be in the bottom of the league this year, competing for a number one pick. And how about Gerald Mayo's debut? A coach that everybody kind of skeptical about it, and had a really good defensive performance.
Yeah, shout out VFL Gerard Mayo on his first win. Former linebacker here at the University of Tennessee. So I'm glad to see him get the dub. Probably the one of the few teams that actually lived up to the hype this week is Houston, the Texans. Great back and forth game with Indianapolis. The Texans barely squeaked that one out 29-27. CJ Stroud had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Joe Mixon 159 rushing yards. Stephon Diggs had 2 reception touchdowns in his Texans debut. But I think what's interesting too is Anthony Richardson only throwing 50% in this game, 9 of 19. He had an unreal touchdown throw to Alec Pierce, back foot 60-yard bomb. I mean, his arm is unreal, but it feels like the accuracy is not I think you would hope for it to be. And at some point, we're going to have Jason on to kind of ask him more about what he's seeing as a Colts fan. So I was talking to him the other day about this, and he has some questions about the coaching staff and if they're putting Richardson and this team in the best position to succeed. And the thing about it is, I think the Colts are still a really good team. To me, they looked like a playoff team. They just played a slightly better team in Houston that's probably going to win a division. The Colts look like a wild card team, and tight results like this are going to be the difference between winning the division and a wild card.
But this game just shows how both teams are going to compete to the AFC South. I think they are going to be the contenders for the division. It was a really entertaining game. Stephon Diggs, good debut. Really solid from the rushing performance. He scored a touchdown, and good to see Anthony Richardson coming back, even though he had a interception. He threw for 2 touchdowns. Because he had a really bad injury last season.
Exactly. So I definitely want to see what it looks like in a full season. I think there's more hope there with him because he actually stretched the field in this game, which is a novel concept for Will Levis. He wasn't able to do that on Sunday. But if you think about it, there's 3 second-year quarterbacks. You have Stroud in Houston, Richardson in Indianapolis. You got Levis in Nashville. I mean, it feels like 3 tiers there between what you have. Stroud obviously seems to be destined for superstardom.
How crazy is that 4 years after he was drafted, Trevor Lawrence is the 3rd best quarterback in his division?
There are times where he looks like the worst quarterback in his division. But, outside of boneheaded decisions by Levis.
Yeah, I'll say, I was at least giving him the benefit of the doubt. It's like, at least he's better than Will Levis, but that's true. He's 3rd to 4th. And who would have thought that Anthony Richardson, that he was dynamic but a little bit flawed at Florida, turned out to be this really good quarterback in the pros?
Well, I don't know if I'd put him in really good quarterback territory yet. Still has a lot to prove, but he has that potential if he stays healthy.
So, yeah. One thing that we forgot to mention, from the Patriots and the Bengals game that was kind of interesting was the bet between Jared Mayo and Jacoby Brissett, because Jacoby Brissett, former NFC State quarterback, had to wear a Vols jersey on a press conference, because of a bet he made with his head coach and VFL Jared Mayo. So that was a kind of funny moment.
Oh yeah, which we're about to get into in just a minute, right after picks for this week. So let's pick these week 2 games. All right, Thursday night football tomorrow night in Miami. Hopefully no one gets arrested going to the stadium this time. Buffalo at Miami. Rematch of the Week 17 game last year that determined the AFC East. Who wins this one?
Unlike last year, give me the Dolphins.
I agree. Give me the Dolphins.
Especially, you know, Miami in September definitely is kind of like what Buffalo is January. The weather determines a lot because Miami playing on this really heat weather can become a factor.
True, it's a night game though, and there's I don't know if it's gonna be raining in Miami, but there is a hurricane hitting Louisiana tonight, so that could cause some issues in Florida, but probably not a lot. Um, any case, heading to Sunday, we'll start off with the New York Jets at the Tennessee Titans. You mentioned cheapish tickets. What do we think here?
Give me it's our teams actually. My New York Jets versus your Tennessee Titans. Even though I'm not being avid Jets fan that I was in the past. I still have jerseys. I still care about the team. I feel like I become a little bit apathetic, but you know, can you blame me? Especially the underperformance there has been for the past 14 years. But any case, give me my New York Jets because I remember. Do you remember the last time they play each other?
It was I felt it was a terrible game, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
it was. It was December.
Yes.
It was a cold December 2nd, 2018. I was at that game actually. I was at that game. Was a 6-6 Titans versus 3-9 New York Jets. Marcus Mariota versus Josh McCown. So you
But then
know,
they go up they went up to the Meadowlands a few years back and lost. The Titans did an inexcusable loss
eh.
on the
And
road.
what's funny about that game is that by the fourth quarter, the Titans was the Jets were winning, kind of comfortably, 22 to 13, and I was like, okay. I was with my ex girlfriend at the time. I was like, okay, let's hit the road. Let's go because we wanted to eat at a really good restaurant. I don't know if you've been to Loveless Cafe in the Nashville metro area. Really good
I've
restaurant.
heard of this. I think it's at the beginning of the Natchez Trace.
Yes, really good. And then I left the game, and then the Titans came back, scored
I
13
remember
points,
this because
and
I was
won.
working on go ahead.
And they won on the last. I think one of the last play of the game, and I was like, "Good God!" I was mad at myself because it didn't stay throughout the entire game and missed that moment.
Yeah, the lesson to never leave early unless it just seems apparently obvious the game's over. I was working on a school project. I think it was for like French or something like that. I remember watching the game on my phone in the Hodges library. That's how long I was in college. I'm getting old, man. I am getting old.
Yeah,
But
6 years
okay,
ago, the last
yeah.
time they faced each other in Nissan Stadium. Good God, time flies. Oh my. And it was funny that I paid, I believe, was the same price that is today. And it's funny how the tickets to watch Josh McCown is the same to watch Aaron Rodgers. I mean, but any case was uh, at least the Jets look better now than they were 6 years ago. But give me the New York Jets.
I know I've just ripped them to shreds, but the defense does look really good, and I have hope they will play better. The offense will play better at home. I could see the Titans pulling this off. I really do. A defensive led performance here, man. But if Will Levis comes out in the home opener and stinks up again, it's going to get real rough, real fast. Um, yeah. All right. Saints at Cowboys. So matchup of 1-0 teams.
Give me the New Orleans Saints. They had a really good week one, even though they play a really weak opponent. But I think they can go to Dallas and beat the Cowboys.
I think this will be a really close game, but I do like Dallas here. Dallas is a good regular season team. All right. Another playoff rematch for Detroit. The NFL schedule gods definitely making a point here early. Uh, Buccaneers at Lions.
Oh, give me the Lions.
Give me the Buccaneers. I like. I thought they looked pretty solid against Washington in Week 1. Baker Mayfield off to a really good start to the chagrin of those in Cleveland. I like Tampa. All right, in Lambeau Field, we got the Indianapolis Colts with the Green Bay Packers.
It's hard to pick this game because, as you mentioned, uh, Jordan Love is still unsure if he's going to play or not. There's a chance. But in any case, I'm going to go with the Colts.
I agree. I'm going Colts as well because I don't think we will see Jordan Love, and even if we do, I think it'll be limited. Give me the Colts. All right, the Niners at the Vikings.
Give me the San Francisco 49ers.
I agree. All right, cross country road trip here. The Seattle Seahawks at the New England Patriots.
Can you believe 10 years ago they were the best teams in their conferences and play for a Super Bowl of a lifetime? It's so crazy to think about that 10 years ago, but
Yeah,
give me give me the Patriots.
I agree. Give me the Patriots too. I think Seattle's the better team, but this is an early kickoff for a West Coast team, and Seattle, frankly, did not look that impressive the other day against Denver. All right, man. What an electric atmosphere we got here. The Giants at the Commanders at the worst football stadium in the country.
Like, who's gonna pay $63 to watch this awful game between at least quarterback who Jaden Daniels, at least people are hopeful he can be a good quarterback against a very disappointing quarterback. Like,
And he played well at Tampa, in my opinion. He showed his flashes.
but that's what Daniel Jones is. Flashes. He's flashes. He can be goodish, but goodish doesn't win divisions and conference championships and take teams to the Super Bowl. But
Very
in
true.
this case, for this game, give me the New York Giants.
Give me the Commanders. I think Jane Daniels is already a better quarterback. I think he will prove he's a better quarterback and will get it done in his home opener. All right. I really, really question anyone who goes to this next game. The Los Angeles Chargers at the Carolina Panthers. I
I
mean,
guess,
unless you really want to watch Justin Herbert.
yeah, and Jim Harbaugh as well. But give me the Chargers. There's like the line is the spread is LA -6. I'll bet the over.
Yeah, yeah. I just noticed that. I'm taking the Chargers -6. That's ridiculous. The
Yeah,
Panthers should not be within single digits of anyone. Um, all right. I would say Clemson Bowl, Browns Jags.
give me Jaguars.
I'm gonna go Browns. I just think the Browns had the better defense. I know it didn't look like it, but their offense gave them literally no help. I think they'll play better against Jacksonville. All right.
The last
All right.
1 p.m. game.
Yep. A battle between the Raiders and the Ravens. I think Ravens will bounce back here, get a huge win.
But I'll bet the under. I think it's going to be a one possession game. Give me Baltimore.
Now off to the 4 p.m. games. And this one I think it's going to be really entertaining. Rams at Cardinals. The Cardinals are 1 point favorite. I know I kind of praised them a little bit earlier, but I don't really get this one. I'll take the Rams.
I'll take the Rams too. I think it's going to be a field goal difference, but give me the Rams.
Yeah. All right. Also, one here, a bit closer than I would anticipate. Steelers only a 2.5 point favorite against the Broncos. Steelers are going to cover that. I think the Steelers are. I don't see the Broncos offense doing much. And I know Bo Nix played all right in his opener, but the Steelers have a much better defense. Give me Pittsburgh.
For this game, I'm definitely gonna pick the Steelers because of the defense. But how funny is that this game have mixed feelings for Russell Wilson? One franchise he was booed out, and another one who he's been a backup. And I guess the crowd is not gonna care as much for him, boo him. I think the crowd's gonna be indifferent towards Russell Wilson.
Yeah, yeah, they're not going to care. They're on to the next quarterback. And Denver didn't really stay there long enough to leave an impression. All right. The 425 kind of primetime game here, which is last a little bit of a luster. Joe Burrow and the Bengals going to Patrick Mahomes, who's had no controversies at all, nothing off the field in the past 24 hours. Just don't pay attention to a former president trying to bring up his wife for no reason at all. And the Kansas City Chiefs. Who wins this one? Because we've had some epic Bengals Chiefs games over the years.
Yeah, let's focus on the on-field action and leave celebrities aside. Uh, I think it's going to be a really great matchup, the best game of the week because of how good both quarterbacks are. And give me the Bengals.
Ooh, man, that would be a wild turnaround to go from losing to the Patriots to beating the Chiefs. I just
But
don't see it though.
that's what kind of the Bengals are. I feel like they're a volatile team that can. I think they can play. They can lose against the Patriots and win against the Chiefs.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, things can happen all the time in the NFL on any given Sunday. I'm going to take Kansas City. The Chiefs are just a better team in my opinion. The Bengals have some problems they're going to have to fix. I think. Um, okay, Sunday Night Football. Caleb Williams getting his primetime debut against C.J. Stroud and the Texans. What do you think here?
For it was funny how this matchup is not bad, but I think it was. I don't know if I'm being harsh, but do you think this matchup really deserved Sunday Night Football kind of thing, or because I think Bengals and Chiefs should have been a Sunday Night Football.
Well, I think CBS wanted the Bengals Chiefs, but like for example, like Bucks Lions should be a prime matchup.
But the Lions already were in Sunday Night Football on the week prior, so I don't know if there's a rule or not. But
Yeah, that's
you don't
true.
you probably don't want to put two Saints and Cowboys. I think are a more interesting matchup than Bears and
Heck, I think Browns Jaguars is a really interesting match. I know they both lost in Week 1, but because of all the storylines heading into that game, because
yeah,
I don't
but
feel like either team has a lot to really prove here in this game between Bears and Texans. You know?
yeah, that's true. One thing that you point out, I think NBC is going to promote the Caleb Williams first primetime game and how CJ Stroud has been a really good quarterback. So at least the quarterback matchup can be appealing, but not as much as probably other games.
True, and Caleb Williams did not play well at all in Week 1. I think he will get better. I just think here it's going to be a little too soon for him. And plus, Rome Odunze, one of his main targets, is injured for a few weeks. I do like Houston to win here.
Give me Texans too.
Yeah, and now Monday night we got the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football. You going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, give me Philly.
Yeah, give me Philly. Yeah, I may only if the Falcons improve their O line, which I don't. I'm not hopeful about that, but give me Philly because but Philly has to show the improvement, especially their that first half performance in Itaquera.
Yeah, and plus we also got primetime Kirk Cousins here as well.
Yeah, that's true. Like, how funny is that Kirk Cousins Kryptonite is playing on the prime time?
And with the Atlanta Falcons, who are known historically for not playing well in prime time. So yeah. But in any case, glad the NFL and the Shield is back. But you know who also is back, Gus? The Tennessee Volunteers. Man, we walked into Charlotte, and yes, Charlotte's going to see a lot of bad football this year with the Panthers. But I hope the fans, football fans in Charlotte, got to witness the Tennessee Volunteers Saturday because that's the only good football team they're going to see inside that stadium all year. Because man, we came out and just destroyed the North Carolina State Wolfpack 51-10. I was confident we would win this game. I did not think we were going to win by 41 though. I mean,
And how this team show kind of versatility. It wasn't one way to attack because they had two passing touchdowns and three rushing touchdowns.
oh, absolutely. Like the thing about this Tennessee team, and I've heard other people say this, is people think Tennessee is a high octane, just throw the ball all over the field. And they can do that. But Tennessee, when they're at their best, can play really good defense and run the ball. And that's what Tennessee did here. Dylan Sampson had an excellent game. We were able to control the lines of scrimmage. I mean, North Carolina State in this game only had 143 yards of offense. This was their lowest yardage output in 15 years since 2009. I mean, I cannot recall Tennessee just thoroughly dominate a P4 opponent like this, like ever. I mean, this is more dominant than Tennessee Iowa back at the Citrus Bowl, in my opinion. Like this was for a team like NC State that had hype coming into this year. I mean, Tennessee just could shut that thing down. I mean, our defensive line were just overwhelming to NC State throughout the season, throughout the night in Charlotte, and all the weapons like the tight ends, like the double tight end sets with Miles Kitselman and Holden Stays. I mean, holy cow! I've never really seen Heupel do that before here at Tennessee. So just the people who say, "Oh, Josh Heupel has a gimmick offense. He's a one-trick pony." That's not the case, boys and girls. The Tennessee Volunteers are here, and they to me look like a legit championship contender. Now, I don't think they are the championship favorite by any stretch. Georgia is that until we beat them. Period, point blank. It's like when Georgia was chasing Alabama, they had to beat Bama. For us, if we're ever going to win a title, we're going to have to beat Georgia. And I'm not saying that's this year, but this team looks like the next step in that maturation because this looks like an alpha Tennessee program. And kind of remember when I was talking about the Detroit Lions, where you have to kind of like you have to convince yourself that you belong in that conversation. When I was watching the Vols on Saturday night, I saw a team that reminded me of like 2017 Georgia or 2008-09 Alabama, a team that looked like they were a step or two away from truly winning championships. A team that had all the depth you want in the lines of scrimmage. They had the athleticism in the backfield. I mean, like Jamar McCoy, for example, the transfer he got from Oregon State. Very physical, shut down his, his opponents all night in the secondary, made great tackles, including a 4-for-1 on Justin Jolly, the tight end for NC State. I mean, just every level of this. And really the only few mistakes were 2 picks from Nico Imialava. I mean, one of those, he's kind of forced over the middle. Freshman mistake. Got to remember, he's only in his 3rd start. It is what it is on that one. The second one, he got hit by the defensive lineman. So I can't really blame him on that one. That was just bad luck on that one. But otherwise he played within himself, played within the offense, and didn't have to overdo it too much. And I think, when you look at the stat line, it isn't great. And he probably won't win the Heisman because I just think we do a lot of other things too well for him to have. Like, he shouldn't be having to throw for 300, 400, 500 yards in a game, kind of like what Hendon Hooker was having to do 2 years ago, because we have a much better defense now. We have a much better running game now. And that should make us much more sustainable this year and hopefully get us over that hump to get into these playoffs.
Yeah, you point out really good point. This team have more ways to score than 2 years ago. And and Nico have. I'm not saying he's already a Hendon Hooker level, but he's showing signs of it.
Yeah, I think all said and done, he could be better. He could definitely be better when all is said and done. Because he has elite physical tools that Hendon didn't have, and it's just unreal to think about what Hypo can do with this guy. Um, when all is said and done here in Knoxville. Um, but still, really the starter was the defense. I mean, the defense just that's what can win you a championship. I mean, offense is great and all, but you got to have a championship level defense. We saw what happened 2 years ago in South Carolina, right? When you gave up 63 points. Granted, I think there was cheating involved, but whatever. You know, uh, the defense still gave up 63 points that night. They still got carved by Florida and Alabama that year. Um, and unfortunately, they weren't good enough to win a title because of the defense. And this defense might change the story, though. And what's great is we have so many bodies that the fact we move so fast doesn't matter. We are still going to be fresh on defense. And that is the scariest part of all. What also should be scary for our opponents as well is James Pierce doesn't have a sack yet. And he's the best player on this defense. You know, opponents are double and triple teaming him. But I think they're not going to be able to do that for much longer because we have too many other good players on this defensive line. Look at Norman Lott. Look at Tyree West. I mean, the talent on this front. Joshua Josephs. I mean, he forced the pick six for Will Brooks. And shout out Will Brooks. I mean, being a walk-on and getting that pick six, what an electric play that was. And that play changed the whole complexion of the game. So there is so much talent on this team, especially defensively, but also on the offense. The tight ends that we saw, the running backs. The one thing I would say, I did feel like the wide receivers weren't on their A game. Outside of Squirrel White had a couple of big plays, but we didn't see a lot from Brew McCord. We didn't see a lot from Chris Brazel in this game or Deontay Fortin. We are going to have to see more from those players, I think, in games down the road. But we really didn't need them here. So, very, very impressive indeed. Of course, the Vols this week, they play Kent State. 48-point favorites over the Golden Flashes. Kent State might be worse than Chattanooga. They lost to an FCS team in St. Francis. Basically, this is one of those: don't get anyone injured, just get through it, take care of business, and get the backups in as fast as you can. You're muted.
Especially because of the matchup they're gonna have on the other week against Oklahoma on the road. So you don't want to miss players for that game.
Exactly, and there's no reason why that we shouldn't be able to dispatch Kent State in very quick order. No disrespect to Kent State, but they're one of the worst teams in the country. I mean, it just is what it is. This is a pointless game for Tennessee, but it just is what it is. Get to 3-0, get us to Oklahoma, and we'll talk way more about Oklahoma. In fact, I do want to mention Oklahoma. I guess just real quick while we're talking about them. They did not look good this week. They only beat Houston 16-12. Their offense did nothing in the second half. And can you guess where in the country Oklahoma ranks for third down conversions?
The bottom?
Very close, 131st. I think there's 134 teams.
Wow.
They're like 2 of 25 so far on third down. Their offensive line is atrocious. Jackson Arnold doesn't have enough time to make throws. And when he does, they seem to be off. And that's, if you're Oklahoma, that has to scare you because Houston lost to UNLV last week. So the fact they were that close with Oklahoma, and then they have Tulane coming this week, who is a good team. And then you've got Tennessee coming. Oklahoma could be in for a rude awakening very soon.
Yeah. And especially 9 years ago today, we had that Needham matchup. So definitely Vols fans did not forget about that game.
You're right about that. I have not forgotten about that game. I'm sure you haven't forgotten about that game. Um, I'll be thinking about that. I'm thinking about that game for the next 10 days, approximately. We go to Norman on September 21st. And trust me, the closer we get, the more I'm going to be thinking about that 2015 game and Eric Stryker insulting Neyland Stadium and the Tennessee fans and Oklahoma fans acting like that. And they're all high and mighty. And, oh, we're just going to walk into the SEC and do whatever we want. Um, we're coming. The Vols are coming. So this is their warning. We'll talk much more about the Oklahoma matchup next week. Um, Speaking of a team, though, that season might be legitimately over, Notre Dame. Notre Dame. You lost to Northern Illinois 16-14. Wow. Wow. I mean, where does Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame go from here?
I mean, first of all, as we discussed on this podcast many times, the only reason Notre Dame is really close to being out of the playoffs is by their own choice of being dependent. Because even if they lost that game, if they were in a conference, they might be competing, for the, let's say the ACC title game. I don't, I can see a one-loss team going to the ACC championship, but now they're independent. They had to run the table, or at least had a quality loss. This game definitely takes them out of the playoff picture.
Yeah. Now, if they run the table, let's say they run the table, and of course, a win that would include a win at the end of the year against USC. I mean, I don't know how things would have to play out the rest of the year. There's maybe a slight chance they could still sneak in, but man, it seems very unlikely, and it seems unlikely they're going to go 11-1.
They would have to, like, a scenario where the 10 and 9, the 11th and 10th teams, uh, two losses, because a one loss Tennessee, I mean, I would imagine it's going to be against, let's say, Bama or Georgia. Let's say if Tennessee loses only to Bama and Georgia, you definitely have to put in Tennessee with those two losses compared to Notre Dame and losing to Northern Illinois.
Yes, 100%. And I think also too, I think they're going to need Northern Illinois to run the table because Northern Illinois still also plays NC State in a few weeks. If Northern Illinois were to beat NC State as well, I think firmly they could be in a position to be in the playoffs themselves. I mean, we got to remember too, this is the difference now with this year. For a team like Northern Illinois, this game makes them relevant. They now control their destiny to the playoffs because if they beat NC State in 2 weeks, they could run the table, win the MAC, and be in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. The fight for the 12 seed is really getting interesting.
Absolutely, because I think Boise State really squandered a big opportunity on Saturday night because if Boise State had upset Oregon, I think they'd be the team right now with the controlling of their own destiny. But really, squandering that opportunity is going to really hurt them, I think, moving forward.
Oh yeah, that's I can see that.
Absolutely, of course. Probably the game of the week though was probably Texas Michigan in terms of like the going into the week. But this game kind of went the way I thought it would. Texas is just a lot better than Michigan right now. And Texas is now up to number 2 in the rankings. I mentioned, but the Vols are now number 7 in the AP rankings. But is Texas Georgia's biggest threat for the championship?
Yeah, I think we saw that Michigan is gonna have uh, championship a hangover, and that the Longhorns are here to stay, and I don't see the Texas out of the playoffs, especially the 12-team playoffs. Definitely, I don't see them out.
No, I think they will 100% be in. They could be the SEC champion for all we know. They have some huge games coming up. They do host Texas or Georgia on October 19th. The same day, in fact, on the same day, we're going to have Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, Tennessee.
Wow, what a weekend of college football!
That's going to be unreal. Yeah. And that's just for Michigan. There's just a lot of turnover. They're going to have to figure out a quarterback because they don't have one right now. So it is what it is. They got their championship. I can't feel too bad for Michigan. But the teams that I can kind of feel bad for, maybe in a Schonford way, are Auburn and Kentucky. Oh my gosh. I don't know which team had it worse. I don't know if I'd rather be Auburn only losing by a touchdown, but throwing like 5 interceptions to California. Cal at home. ACC powerhouse Cal, by the way. The ACC Cal Golden Bears winning on the road at SEC Auburn. Or Kentucky, who's starting quarterback against South Carolina, who, remember, the week before almost lost to Old Dominion. Brock Vandergrift completed 3 passes, 3 of 10, and lost 31-6 to South Carolina. Which one of those is worse to you? Peyton Thorne throwing 5 interceptions against Cal.
I mean, do you, and I'll throw another question also. Can this win revitalizes Shane Beamer's season? Hello, hello, hello.
Aha, there we go. All right, do you have me again?
Yeah, I have you. I was even checking if I was have audio problems. So I guess it was you.
No. It was me. But anyway, um, for Shane Beamer, it definitely was a really good one for him. Considering that I think the fans were this close to turning on him from the week before, but at least some timing and got him college game day for this week. So shout out to him for that. But man, Mark Stoops has to be in the hot seat now because if you look at Kentucky, yeah, they've been playing consistently better than what they normally have been, right? Um, but Kentucky isn't going to get any better at all. And I think the question that Kentucky football has to ask themselves is, okay, do we think that there's any coach out there that could potentially take Kentucky into that next tier of football? Do we think the way that we're playing football right now is going to elevate us into that next tier? That question can't be yes. I mean, Kentucky is playing old, uninspired, stagnant, and it is just leading to an absolute catastrophe on the offense. I mean, watching Kentucky is just excruciating. I mean, they're horrible.
Yeah, and Mark Stoops was supposed to be the coach who's gonna bring to this next level, and I guess especially the way they played in the third quarter. What a terrible third quarter!
Yeah. And it's not like South Carolina only had 250 yards of offense in this game, but that's all they needed because Kentucky literally did nothing on offense. Um, and they have Georgia coming this week, so good luck with that to the Wildcats. It's already a basketball season in Lexington, to say the least. But they'll find they're going to lose to Tennessee in that too. So, uh, so don't worry about that.
Real
Uh,
quick, I just want to point out something kind of. So Florida won, but the big storyline was uh, Garen Metz was, put on a bench, and DJ Legway play well-ish. So I guess the Gators are like, okay, we gotta win in the season, but maybe we'll be one of the few.
Well, they got a really interesting game with A&M. So I think Billy Napier knows his job is basically toast. So why not gamble with the freshman quarterback? At least if you lose games with a freshman quarterback, you can say, oh, he's a freshman quarterback. Um, so I think that's a logic there from Billy Napier. I don't think that's going to help him very much because his recruiting hasn't been very good. But um, that's kind of the gamble. It's like in chess, it's a gambit. So that's the way I see it.
You
Speaking of
don't
SEC, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to pivot to Bama, but anyway, go ahead.
I was gonna say, fun fact: Vandy and South Carolina are the only SEC undefeated, unranked teams. How crazy is that?
That is very interesting. Of course, South
And
Carolina, if they win this week, they'll be ranked.
and also, South Carolina is currently number one in the conference because they are the only team who beat another SEC team. So currently, South Carolina is leading the SEC.
I'm sure Shane Beamer is printing off posters as we speak.
Oh yeah, he's gonna brag about this definitely.
Um, One team that shouldn't brag about the performance is Alabama, though. They maybe not as much as last year. They still kind of struggled with South Florida. Granted, if you look at the final score, it was 42-16. But this score was 14-13 in the fourth quarter. That offense was not very good at all. They can't really pass the ball. They're definitely a running football team. And I think that's going to catch up with Alabama at some point this year. They don't have the it factor. And when Georgia goes to Tuscaloosa in a few weeks, I know Bama owns Georgia. I just find it hard for this Alabama team how they're going to beat them.
Yeah, and and I know Kevin DeBoer, Kevin DeBoer, it, he's showing signs because it's hard to find an identity because Kellen DeBoer inherited a team who was a dynasty under Nick Saban, and now he has to bring his own identity. So I think Alabama is trying to find their new identity under a new leadership.
Yeah. It's going to take them a little bit to do that. You just have to wonder how much patience Alabama fans have when they're not
I mean,
perfect.
I mean, when Nick Saban came to town, of course he was more enthusiastically greeted, and people were more excited for his arrival than Ke- Kalen DeBoer. But in his first season, he had a below average performance and lost to Louisiana Monroe at home. So I don't think and then Bama fans want him out, and then he turned around and built the dynasty that we all came to watch. So I think Alabama athletic department's kind of like they're gonna have at least 3 year patience with Kellen DeBoer.
Yeah, as they 100% should. Um, and also Alex Golish, man, he's going to be a coach at a major program next year. Former Vols OC now at South Florida. He's going to be somewhere next year. I just don't know where, and I really hope it's not Florida. So I'm going to go on that limb right now. All right, this is the most fun topic to me. This feels like the beginning of the end for the Dion Clown Show, the Dion Circus at Colorado. They got absolutely dominated by Nebraska, 28-10. And it's not even just the fact that Colorado got blown out in this game. It's some of the antics that were going on. Shador basically quit the game. 4 minutes left. He left the field, which you don't really see that often in football. And then in the post game, he basically was just like, well, you don't see Dylan Raiola get hit. Why do I get hit all the time? and basically blamed his offensive line for why he played bad. Um, and then came out this week that two things. That one, at least it was alleged that they had asked the band to not play the fight song during touchdowns that Shador Sanders had because they wanted to play his rap song instead, which Colorado came out and denied that even happened. But, it sounds like something that would happen. And then there was a fight video that came out between a current and former coach in the parking lot that Warren Sapp himself narrated and spread all over the internet. Man, uh, if you're a Colorado fan, this just has to be excruciating to watch.
Is it though? Is it though? I'm gonna sound crazy, but I'm gonna defend. Uh, I'm gonna defend for a minute. Deion Sanders, because we all forget that he inherited a program. He inherited a program that was 1-11, 1-11.
And completely
So
irrelevant.
what?
And completely irrelevant. No one watched Colorado. No one
Yeah,
talked about Colorado. Did we ever even had we ever mentioned the Colorado Buffaloes on this podcast until he went to Colorado?
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Of course, the way all this journey with Deion Sanders started was thrilling. He beat TCU, the runner-up of last year, the 2023 national championship. He beat Nebraska, Colorado State. They had that really big matchup against Oregon, and then things fell apart. Did not make a bowl game. Okay, but I know he's kind of between a rock and a hard place, because Colorado fans are, of course, disappointed that they were expecting a lot more from Deion Sanders, but can they really be that demanding after literally the year before Deion Sanders arrived? They were 1-11, irrelevant in their conference.
Well, I mean, it's one thing, right? Like to demand more. But I think it's another thing just to demand that your program isn't embarrassing, that your program is a professionally ran organization. Right? This program is not professionally ran. Like, Josh Heupel isn't running around and doing all kinds of stupid antics. We aren't seeing coaches fight in the parking lot. Or we're not asking the Pride to like not play Rocky Top for Nico Imialava's rap song. Why are we not doing that? Because we're a serious football team. We're a serious football program. Colorado is not a serious football program. Deion Sanders has not been on one high school recruiting visit.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm going to the other side. I'm gonna make the points that why should the tough questions for Deion Sanders is that is he the coach for the Colorado Buffaloes football team, or he's coaching his son and also the football team?
It's a second. He's coaching. He's there for his sons. When they're gone, and them and Travis Hunter, he's gone. And then Colorado's going to be in even a worse spot than before he got there.
Yeah. So I what Colorado fans are. Everybody knew this was a shotgun wedding. A kind of arranged kind of thing. Like he had a good performance at Jackson State. Of course, did not win their conference there, but everybody was very in the hype. But the hype lasts really short.
Oh, for sure. It doesn't seem like it's going to reverse any time soon. Um, all right, real quick, just some other, quick reactions to other things. Penn State kind of struggled against Bowling Green, kind of surprising, kind of concerning for them, only beating Bowling Green by a touchdown. Connor Bazelak played well in that game.
Uh,
Arkansas,
how?
Oklahoma State. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna miss that game. What about Arkansas?
Yeah, well, Arkansas should have won that game. They had that game won, but they missed some field goals, had a lot of fumbles. just playing some undisciplined football, and
Yeah,
they ended up losing.
and that was my upset alert. Remember last week, so I almost was right.
Absolutely. Tulane, they almost lost upset against Kansas State, another G5 team that just missed out on a golden opportunity. Of course, they get to play Oklahoma this week. Illinois did pull off an upset. They rushed the field against Kansas. Think about that. Kansas is good enough now to where they're getting the field rushed for beating them.
And they're undefeated, 2-0.
Yeah, they play in Nebraska in a few weeks. That could be a pretty interesting game. Iowa State, shout out to the Cyclones. They were down 13-0 at the half in the rivalry game. Came back to win 20-19. Really bad loss for Iowa and Kirk Ferentz. Kirk Ferentz, he has to be on his last legs at Iowa. Once again, bad offense, doomed the Hawkeyes. Go figure. At least they scored in this game, but man, they aren't going to ever win anything with that offense.
Yeah, I think especially this team is very defense reliable, and when the defense kind of falls apart, that's what happened in the second half. Then the Hawkeyes are screwed.
Absolutely. Shout out Clemson, though. Clemson played really well. 66 points in App State, kind of an impressive performance. Arizona, not that impressive, 22-10 over Northern Arizona. Oregon, man, they're concerning, to say the least. They don't look dominant like I thought they would. All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into upset alerts. Who is on upset alert this week? And
Clemson. I think NC State bounced back and beat Clemson in Memorial Stadium.
I don't think they play this week. I think they play next week.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, you're looking at week 4. This is week 3.
Yeah. So my week 3 upset alert. Ooh. Give me Oregon State against Oregon.
I could see that Oregon has not been impressive, and this is going to be the Super Bowl for Oregon State.
Yeah, the game's at Corvallis, and they want to prove that, hey, do you think the Pac-2 or whatever remain of the Pac-12 commissioner, I think for even the conference itself, what remains is this is the Super Bowl, not only for the Oregon State University, but I think for the Pac-2.
Yeah, I know Washington State also plays Washington this week as well. So both Pac-2 teams going up against our arch rivals. A lot to prove for both teams.
So Oregon State is my upset alert against Oregon.
Yeah, for me, give me Tulane over Oklahoma. The Oklahoma their offense looks horrible. And if they show up and don't make any improvements this week, Tulane could 100% go into Norman and win that game, which would take some of the shine off the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. So I hope Oklahoma wins because I want all the shine possible for Tennessee-Oklahoma. But I could see the Tulane Green Wave causing that not to happen. All right. What do we think is an underrated matchup?
Underrated matchup. Missouri, Boston College, both ranked, both undefeated. So, and Missouri's in the top 10, the number 6 in the nation. They are ahead of Tennessee in the rankings.
Absolutely. Of course, you can never overlook the backyard brawl in West Virginia, Pittsburgh. This is a huge game for both teams. West Virginia, they lost in week 1 to Penn State. It would be huge for them to get a big non-con win here in Pittsburgh. But if Pittsburgh starts 3-0, no one's really talked about them. Could Pittsburgh kind of get back to where they were with Kenny Pickett and maybe be a sneaky ACC contender? Beating West Virginia would be a big start towards that. So, also Vandy, Georgia State. I'm just I'm curious, can Vandy start 3-0? That would be a huge accomplishment for them on the road at Georgia State. But in
Yeah.
any case,
So, how about the Vols? I think the big question is, can they cover the line? I mean, the line is minus 49.
it depends. It depends how early Hypo wants to take out the starters. Because
Yeah.
I think he's thinking about Oklahoma. I bet we actually don't cover. Well, we still might actually, but it'll be close. I don't know. I'm not going to touch it. Um,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I had the same mentality. I think Hype would just want to get a good win, but I don't think he wants like a blowout because again, he just definitely don't want to risk losing any players for the big matchup in Norman that he definitely has a lot to prove.
absolutely. All right, so I picked the top 5 games here for us to pick winners. Um, even though these are from a team perspective, I wouldn't pick this, but considering how good the game was last year and all the storylines, I think it deserved a spot. Colorado going to Fort Collins and Colorado State. I mean, this is going to be the biggest game, probably home game ever in Colorado State history. Can Colorado State avenge their double OT loss from last year?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think they definitely were counting the days for this matchup because they went to Boulder and took the Buffaloes to overtime. And back then they were undefeated, and everybody was high, on the Deion Sanders hype. So I think they want revenge. And give me Colorado State.
I'm gonna be honest here. I would have picked Colorado State a few weeks ago. However, they really disappointed me when they went to Texas and didn't score a single point. Um, I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and I just think Colorado, despite all of their problems, this is one of the few games where two players can overcome an entire team. And I think Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders will find a way to will Colorado to a win here. I'll give it to the Buffaloes. All right. College game day. LSU at South Carolina. Can Shane Beamer start 3-0?
And also, how big this game for LSU? I mean, they won last week, but definitely was a weak matchup. Uh, or even yeah, they play Nichols, even though they struggle a little bit in the first half.
Right. They were only up like 2, I think, at halftime or something like that.
They were only up by 9 at halftime. So how big this game is for Brian Kelly? Because if he loses, then people will really start to question him.
Absolutely. It might be raining here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going against LSU, but I just think LSU is a much better team. I'm going to go with the Bayou Bengals.
Give me South Carolina.
They'll be ranked. Maybe they don't have to cheat this time, too, to win this one. Um, Alabama at Wisconsin in Madison with a jump around. Can the Badgers pull off the upset?
First of all, how weird is that Alabama those non-con matchups? Because for years Alabama was bashed for scheduling weak opponents, really weak opponents. At least they are scheduling Texas, South Florida is good. I mean, it's borderline okay, and now going to Madison. So at least you have to give credit for Alabama scheduling those kind of matchups. And give me Wisconsin.
Wisconsin's been disappointing to me early on. They were trailing Western Michigan in the fourth quarter. They only beat FCS South Dakota by a touchdown last week. Um, I still think, Luke Fickle to me, this game is huge for Luke Fickle. He needs to prove that Wisconsin is moving in the right direction, that he's moving towards the offense that he wants. Because so far, Wisconsin looks anemic under him with Tyler Van Dyke, the former Miami quarterback. I just think Bama has too much. Give me the Tide. All right. Next up, we got Boston College of Missouri. You mentioned this, a sneaky top 25 matchup in Columbia.
I'm gonna keep with my I think give me Missouri.
Yeah, I'm going Missouri too. Boston College had a good win in week one, but I really think Florida State is just that bad. Missouri is a lot better. All right. And my rare non-Saturday game of the week. This game is Friday night on Fox. It's a Big 12 clash. Arizona gets their introduction to the Big 12 going on the road to Manhattan. This is 20 versus 14. This game could go a long way to determine who comes out of the Big 12. Who wins between Arizona and Kansas State?
That was literally what I was gonna say. Is that this matchup can really determine who takes the lead in the Big 12. But give me Kansas State.
I agree. Give me Kansas State. Arizona's defense has struggled so far, and last week their offense did too against an FCS team in northern Arizona. All right, so we'll see how week 3 goes of college football. Next week will be big for sure. Real quick, just some quick baseball talk. We're getting really close to the end of the season, only 2 weeks away. I saw the Yankees won on a walk-off tonight against the Royals, so they're up a game and a half now in the AL East. The Guardians are up 4.5 on the Royals. Looks like the Guardians are on their way to winning that division. The
How
Astros winning by 4 games.
how about, like, did you saw what happened in Toronto? So the Mets were down by 2 runs, and then and Toronto pitcher was having a no hitter up until the top of the nine, when Francisco Lindor hit a home run and the Mets won 6-2. How about my New York Mets? I mean, can you believe they were literally dealing with a non-hitter? This might would have changed the trajectory of the Blue Jays, and then on the road, on the not at the the top of the nine, they came out, and with Francisco Lindor got a win there. Now with this win, the Mets surpasses the Braves.
Yeah, and the Braves, frankly, have not don't deserve to be in the playoffs right now. They're a mess, lots of injuries, and it's just the offense hasn't been good. And I know they won last night, but man, it's just not looking like this is going to be the year for the Braves. So it is what it is when it comes to the Atlanta Braves. Um, and it's going to be kind of unpredictable to see who wins right now. The last AL wildcard team, the Twins, by 3 games over the Detroit Tigers. So it's going to
But
be a fun in the season.
and I think the only division that I can see is kind of decided is the NL Central. I don't see the Brewers losing to the Cubs, but I mean, I think the for me, I think the current teams that are on the top of the division are gonna finish on the top. I don't see Yankees, the Guardians, Astros, Phillies, the Brewers, and the Dodgers losing their leading their division.
Yeah, the most interesting race is Mets and Braves for that last spot. So we'll see what happens. Right now, I would lean towards the Mets finishing that off, personally. Um, Real quick, I do want to just shout some WNBA real quick. We haven't really talked about this in a few weeks, but um, you know, Angel Reese announced that she's out for the season, had an injury to her wrist, and this seemingly will give the Rookie of the Year to Caitlin Clark, who has been outperforming her any way she deserved to be the Rookie of the Year because of how good the Indiana Fever have been since the Olympics break. I mean, they right now have a winning record. They're going to be in the playoffs, and um, these playoffs are going to be real interesting. I've never really watched NBA playoffs before, but I'm going to be watching these. Although tonight, Caitlin Clark was 6 of 22 shooting, so not fantastic tonight. But they were playing the best team in the league in the Las Vegas Aces, and Aja Wilson just set the WNBA's single season scoring leader. So she right now is taking a tight grip on being the best player in that league. I'll be curious to see how long she can stave off Caitlin Clark though, for that title.
Yeah, I unfortunately, Angel Reese being out for the year kind of takes the on the court, you know, good part of the rivalry between her and Caitlin Clark. But I wish a good recovery.
Absolutely. Between her and Cameron Brink, there's a lot of young, exciting talent in the league this week, uh, this season. All right. So real quick, NASCAR Joy Logano won in Atlanta. It was an exciting race as always. I love Atlanta. It's my favorite track. So that first round of the playoffs, like Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin ran into some trouble early. I think they're going to be fine. They go to Watkins Glen this week. Probably my favorite road course. I love that racetrack in upstate New York. So we'll see who wins there. I think Chase Elliott could win here. I think Chase Elliott's due for another win. He loves that racetrack. It'd be huge for him to get a win early on to try to make a run for the championship. And begin to transition over to some soccer. The U.S. men's team had a friendly last night, and guess what? The U.S. men's team did not win. They drew level with New Zealand 1-1 and but 1-1. But that's not the most important news. We do officially have a head coach in Mauricio Pochettino, and that we kind of knew this has been coming for weeks. Former Chelsea manager, and we've been pretty complimentary, but it's just nice to know that we finally do have the coach, and hopefully he can kind of make the most of what we have left before the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, as we discussed before, was a good pick from all the choices, and he has a really good European experience, and he can bring some kind of a different perspective. And frankly, the MLS has been kind of really open to the Argentinian coaching tree, so wasn't surprised that he was finally announced as the new U.S. men's national team head coach.
Yeah, it's been paid $6 million a year. So the U.S. is paying.
Yeah,
As they should. But Gus, I know you're not very happy with your national team. As I'm not been too happy with mine, but at least when it comes to his men's team, I don't have World Cup aspirations. Brazil should be aspiring for World Cups. Doesn't seem like that's the case right now.
bad performance against Paraguay. Lost 1-0. Beautiful goal by Diego Gomez in the 20th minute. But Brazil, really disappointing performance. It seemed like a team was all over the place, had a lot of individual talent, but no collective performance. Currently, Brazil would have been qualified to the World Cup as a fifth place, but Brazil lost four out of the last 5 games in the South American qualification. In I mean, they're behind Ecuador, who started the qualification with -3 points. So things are not looking good right now to Brazil. Dorival Jr. is definitely on the hot seat. But one thing kind of, consoles me is that when Brazil was champions the last time around, they had a very bad qualification. They only got into the World Cup on the last game against Venezuela. So maybe Brazil also had a really up and down kind of qualification and it gets in, and like in 2002 wins the World Cup. But right now I'm very disappointed of the performance Brazil, and hopefully Neymar comes back soon because definitely this team miss their on-field leader.
I mean, that definitely would help a lot, but you don't want to play around with qualifiers, man. Take it from an American. I mean, look what happened. We thought we had it in the bag with Trinidad and Tobago, and
I mean,
that did not work.
if it was 4 years ago, I'd have been much worried because then you go the 1 2 4 go straight to the World Cup, and then the fifth place go to a draw like a wild card game. But now is practically impossible to be out. I believe it's like 7 goals straight, and I think it's like 6 goals straight, and then seventh place goes to a wild card game. So it's frankly impossible to Brazil to be out. But I think the Brazilian fans are not excited to watch their team. But I mean, let's face it. If when the World Cup starts, Brazil's gonna be favored. But right now, the team looked very uninspiring.
Yeah, yeah, lots of work to do, and it sounds like they might need a new manager.
Yeah, yeah. And the question is, if Dorival Jr. gets booed out, and I'm wouldn't be surprised because it seems he's very average of a coach to be in the Brazil national team's head coach, which is one of the top soccer gigs in the world. Then who replace him? Like,
Jurgen
if
Klopp.
I I can see that, but I think my four options are to be, Jurgen Klopp would be a surprising out of the box kind of pick, but let's if we want to keep on our local market here, we have two really good Brazilian coaches who won a lot of titles in the last 4 years, Renato Gaúcho and Cuca. Of course, they have a lot of off-field uh, controversies. Renato Gaúcho because of his political choices, Cuca because of a unresolved kind of sexual assault allegation from the 80s. And then if you want to go international, you have two Portuguese coaches who really done very well with Brazilian teams. Jorge Jesus with Flamengo and Abel Ferreira for Palmeiras. So I think I would have picked one of those four coaches. I would have picked one of those four. If I don't know if it's going to be a Brazilian coach or Portuguese coach. That's I think the big question is going to be if Brazilian Confederation decides to replace their coach. Last, uh, speaking of Brazilian Confederation, their one thing they have good is their Brazilian Cup because it's thrilling. We had quarterfinals night, second leg. Corinthians, I was just, I mentioned in the early in the pod, had a last second goal to win 3-1 against Juventude, advancing to the semis. And last night, earlier this week, they announced Memphis Depay, former Atletico Madrid, Netherlands national team, for a 2-year deal, and he's gonna earn almost $1 million per month. So the fans are excited, but again, as I think you remember, it's kind of weird to see a team who has a lot of money issues not being good with this debt creditors and sometimes not paying the salaries on the right time go out and get this very expensive international player. But I'm not inside. I don't know what's going on with Corinthians finances, but they got a really good, really expensive player. And the other team who qualified tonight, Vasco da Gama, of all odds, they lost 2-1, but they won on penalty shootouts. Tomorrow, São Paulo against Atlético Mineiro and Flamengo and Bahia. My picks are São Paulo and Flamengo, and you know this Brazilian Cup really is really. I mean, if São Paulo and Vasco qualify, the semis are going to be nuts. It's going to be São Paulo, Vasco, Corinthians, Flamengo. I mean, the top teams in terms of popularity in Brazil are going to be in it. So uh, I'm excited about the Brazilian Cup.
Yeah, as you should. I mean, it's always good to have the big brands, especially for a team like Corinthians who's been struggling this year. It's good to see some momentum, some positive momentum. And I know the same would be true for Vasco da Gama.
Yeah, that's true. I think Corinthians and Vasco are the teams who needed the most to win this tournament. I think both are struggling off the field. Both have been, disappointing seasons time after time for the past, like, what? Vasco is like 10 years, Corinthians 6 years. So I think Corinthians and Vasco are the ones who really needed to win this title. Just to finish off with Brazilian Championship, week 26 this weekend. Botafogo still leading. I mean, since our last pod, we only had one game, which was a game that it was played today and was delayed because of the water issues in Rio Grande do Sul. Internacional B Fortaleza. So Botafogo is still the number one team in the standings, and they're gonna play Corinthians on Saturday. So Corinthians has to win it, because even though the Corinthians are really good on the cups in the Brazilian Championship, they're still in the relegation zone.
Oh, for sure. And hopefully they can get that dub because, as you said, the opportunities are running out.
Yeah.
Yeah, 13 weeks to go.
And I think for Botafogo is a kind of a sneaky game, because even though they are favored to win, all the pressure is going to be on Botafogo. And is there going to be another test? Can Botafogo handle the pressure to be the favorite?
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have tonight for Two Countries to America's All Sports, the only sports podcast that is both about American and Brazilian. And Gus?
All right.
And, absolutely.
Have a great night.
Absolutely. Y'all take it easy here on this early Thursday morning.